We've been painting tropical scenes, so I thought we could do some tropical leaves, and these are from pages that I've folded. Ours will be on larger sheets if you're following along with the Diagonal classes, but let's just start with a bit of a color palette. So I'm not going to talk too much. You'll find all of the references in the link below. My brushes are kind of small. Let me just get a bigger brush. Alright, I've got bigger brushes. This one is a Holcraft Flat 14. And this is one I brought with from South Africa. It's just a pointed round. I'm not sure what size it is, but guessing from that, you could match your brushes up. Right. A water brush just in case. Now I've pre-wet my palette, and we are going to work with analogous colors. So that is 3 sets of colors: yellow, orange, oh, not enough, orange and pink. If you don't have that opera pink, you're more than welcome to use one of your other pinks, or a red with lots of water. And you can mix a little bit of each in the other to see what color combinations you can come up with, or just to notice how they mingle with each other. Next we'll do like a reddish purple, a purple, and a blue, and again taking some of that color, mixing it into some of the other puddles, just to see what it will look like if they start blending and mixing, because we're going to use these mixes in a minute to paint our tropical leaves. Next I'd like to do a little bit of green, so we can go green, light blue, and like a turquoisey blue. Or if you don't have turquoisey blue, you could always use Prussian blue or one of those greenish blues. So the lime green, the cerulean blue, and the cobalt teal. All right. Now let's go into the actual leaves. So what I like to do here is work wet in wet, but instead of thinning the paint down into a wet or only wet area, I'm going to do sections at a time. So for this one, we can wet that outer perimeter. Make sure it's nice and juicy, nice and wet. There we go. And we can leave that middle a little bit dry. So you'll see that we have worked right up to the edge of that center pencil line where that squiggly part is. All right. And that is nice and wet. It's shiny everywhere. Can you see that? All right. And I think for this one, let's go with lime green and this pinkish purple. But we'll start with the lime green at the outer edge. So into that wet edge on the dry side, you are going to put a little bit of lime green straight out of the palette. Don't try and scoop it up. You just need to put some on your brush so that you can deposit it into that wet area. Take your time. A little bit less here. Right. Now swirl it a little bit so that it can run into those wet areas. Now with your dry patch there, we can go into this light purplish violet, and I'm going straight in. So this is a wet brush on a dry surface, a little bit at a time, and just touching into that wet area. I don't want to really mix them up, and I'll go slowly but surely going into that wet to dry and dry to wet, a little bit into that color, trying not to mix them up too much. You don't have to follow the lines exactly, but here and there. So you'll see I'm making lines into my lime green, and that will be perfect. Okay, so mine's making a little puddle there because it's on a fold, but it's an easy fix. You can take a dried out brush and you can scoop up some of that if you have puddles that you don't want. Rinse and dry out the brush and slurp up that. So while that is wet, I'm just going to look at how the colors are moving. I think I'm going to leave that as is and move on to this one. Now we are running the risk of touching into that lime green and I'll just wait for that edge to dry a little bit more because I don't want the two leaves to merge with each other. But I can also go in with my first color. So I'm going to use these colors and then come in with a little bit of yellow while everything is still wet. So on dry surface with your brush filled with color, we can go in there, just paint into that shape. Right, and while it's wet, don't let your paint dry for this step here. I'm going to go back and forth into those colors. See that's bleeding a little bit, which means I touched that wet edge. I'm not scared about it. Now, this is a fairly large area. I'm going to stop at that center line only because I don't want to thin down my paint too much. I don't want to let my edge dry, and I certainly don't want to have a messy scattering of colors. I'll rather have a nice even flow and go back and forth between the blue, the lime green, and the water, so we continue to have wetness all around. So you get slightly different results when your brush begins to dry out versus the type of marks you'll get from a wet brush. Now the idea here is to really slow down and notice the colors, see them flow, experience that movement you get from watercolors. Right. The other side we can do more or less the same, but I'm going to go from the bottom upwards this time. Let's go for the teal here in the stem. You can always add details later. We don't need to add all the details just yet. Now, if you pre-mixed your puddles, you at some point notice that they run out. If you adjust the colors, it really doesn't matter. If you stay in your blue range or in your purple range or in your warm range, you'll always have a mixture of colors. And the ones I'm suggesting here are just that. It's suggestions. And you can chop and change any way you like. Now with that wet edge, we're just continuing back and forth with those colors, filling in our delicious monster leaf here. It was nice to variate the saturation as well. And of course, if you want to change your plant, you can always add more lines or depths or movement. There we go. So what we need now is for both of those to dry. And while that is drying, you can take a little break or go ahead and dry that with the hairdryer. So I'm going to do that first and then come back. Okay, now we're all dry and we can start adding those second layers. Now, for a second layer, you can add texture, detail, you can adjust the colors, you can do so many things to make your image come to life. So the first thing I would like to do is I'd like to darken this edge on this leaf, but I don't want to lose the lime green. I want to keep the lime green, but here and there in strategic places I want to change that. So we'll use a little bit of wet in wet. And it's not to move any of those colors, it's to have another layer to accentuate all the details. Now you'll see I'm going to swoop that in to that center so that when our additional color bleeds, that it softens into those areas. And with the corner of my brush, I'm going to pick up a little bit of that cobalt teal and just dash it in there. Now I'm not looking to cover anything at this stage. I'm looking to add a little bit of detail. Now I could even add some of that detail onto my drawing lines. I could enhance some thicker marks. And what's going to happen here is, because we are adding a little bit of color onto pre-wet, wettened areas, pre-wet areas, we can expect a soft result here. All right. Now into that dry, I'm just going to lightly touch to create a few random waves. Not waves, veins. Okay, just like that. That's all the detail and texture you need. Next we can move on to this one. And here I'm going to follow the width of my brush on top of my drawing lines for the veins. So those veins I've drawn in before, I'm going to come in and just wet them again. If there aren't any, just bring some in, and you'll see that it's only on the veined areas. And this time I'm going to bring in that yellow. And I know it's sounding kind of weird to bring yellow in as the vein color, but just look at that pop happening right there. All right. And the thing is, for something to shift and to pop, you just need a little bit of detail. You have to learn to stop at some point and let it be. So it's now a good time to take a break and a couple of deep breaths before we start on our bird of paradise. Now, I'm going to do that one with you in real time, but get up and go and have a quick break, and when this is dry we'll get back together. Right, mine is dry, and lucky for me I have my bird of paradise here on a separate piece of paper. And if you are following along, you'll notice that we've traced this on the front part of a page, like there, a double folded page, and we've done the bird of paradise on this side, which will leave you the back end of another page to fill in, and then the next one is your palm tree. But we'll go over that in class. And of course you are still free to bind your signature in any way you like. So let's get back to all the details here. Now for this one, we are going to stick to our color palette there, that one there, and reimagine what the bird of paradise looks like. Now we could roughly follow the guidelines. So this is like orange, orangey pink. This can be orangey yellow. These can be purple. I want to bring in a third one here. I'm looking for a blunt pencil. Do I have one? This one's got a thicker. I want to bring in a third one there. Not the same, but still. Right, and this is greenish blue, and then you'll have a bigger leaf on your drawing there. Let's start from the back and work forward. So we can use that cobalt teal in there. So we just grabbed the color, placed it in, and I'm going to leave a slight edge there that's not going to touch that, because I want to do this in one go, then dry and come back in with our second detail effects without making too much of a fuss. I'm going to erase that later. Just going to stay here on the edge. So this one we said pinkish orange. So pinkish orange, and you can mix it straight out of that palette, wet in wet, and then a little bit of orange, a little bit of pink, and vary up that. I'm just going to grab some red here as well to deepen that. So you have variation in that one shape created with a continuous stroke there. So we can go orange here and then go into the yellow for those tips. I'm liking that already. And then the surprise is a little purple there and purple pink. Oh, love that. Nice and deep, nice and dark there in the bottom. And I'm just swooshing off what is on my brush. Now these can have little tendrils and all kinds of interesting things. Let's pop a bit of orange in there. Oh, look at that. Look at that. All right. Let's intensify just a dab or a swish of color. Could even go for that reddish purple here. And that's sort of damp dry now, so I can touch on that and fill those gaps. And then this one, do cobalt teal with a little bit of lime green. How about that? And I'm going to let that touch there just to make it interesting. Shall we do a dash of dark blue? Let's do that. Just to create the illusion that this is in shadow. Okay, that's it. I'm going to leave it, let it dry. Maybe darken up this back one a little bit more. Some blue. There we go. Okay, I'm going to let it dry now on its own. Now we can come back in and add color in the background. But remember, this is going to be next to a blank page. So if you could imagine that being there and this being here, and that being your next page, of course in an A4, if you trace it on an A4, you're going to have all this space to add more tropical leaves. And you can look at reference images, at examples, at some other people's work, and then create an entire tropical forest scene here. All right, so we can, of course, bring in more details with this one, but I am going to leave it as is. I'm going to let it dry and then later come back with a smaller brush and highlight with yellow, highlight with a little bit of purple. And when I say highlight, I don't mean lift it out with a highlight. I mean give it detail. So I'm going to take a smaller brush and I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to finish off that edge with a solid yellow, for example, and then come back in with a little bit of orange and a little bit here and there, just to give your plant those final details. And this could be done at the very, very end. If you do it now while it's still damp, you're going to get a little bit of bleeding still, and that is beautiful. But you don't want all the technique to be a bleeding type of technique. I think I'll go for that reddish purple there, and also that orange in there, and then come in and highlight or accentuate that split there. And remember, dry brushing is also a beautiful technique to use for the nails. Just in time with the alarm going off and me needing to head off and do something else. So I hope you've come this far to enjoy the tropical leaves and enjoy a little mindful sketchbook practice and build on this beautiful thing we are busy making.